I'll wait another minute or two just to let anyone who's still connecting in, and then we'll get going. I'll try to keep an eye on the text chat, which I've got down here. If you have questions and want to ask them as we're going, pop them in there, and see if I can get to them either while I'm doing the initial overview or at a question time towards the end. Okay, well, we've got a lot to get through, so I'm going to get stuck in. So what I want to do today is to talk about the electric book workflow. And we call it a workflow because it's more than just one particular technology. It's a number of tools that we use. It's also a process that we work with at Electric Bookworks to create books. And those things all combine to create the workflow that we use to produce books. The thing I'm going to focus on today is the Electric Book template, which is the software code we use to store books and collections of books and output them in multiple formats. And so what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do is go through some examples of projects we've done with the Electric Book so that we can see what's possible. I'm going to focus on the template itself, and then on 3 key projects we spend a lot of time on at Electric Bookworks. And then I will show how the Electric Book Manager works. That's an interface for non-technical collaborators to be a part of the bookmaking process, to edit content and submit their changes and so on. And I'll just be showing you how we create a from scratch brand new book in a few minutes on the Electric Book Manager. And then for the last section of the demo, I'm going to work on that same book that I created on the Electric Book Manager on my local machine to do more powerful things with design and different outputs, including an ePub output. So let's just talk a little bit more about the Electric Book template itself first. So the way we think about the Electric Book template is it's a way to create multiple format outputs of books, but with a single content source. So we need to be able to produce a website of a book or a collection of books, an ebook, either as an ePub or sometimes as an app, Android app, Windows app, and sometimes iOS app. That's a whole other story. And of course, print books. We need to be able to produce beautiful print PDFs and also screen PDFs for online distribution, and all from a single content source. And that's what's really, really critical, is that with that single content source, we never have to worry about different editions getting out of sync, the ePub getting out of sync with the print book, and so on, as changes and corrections are made, as translations are added, and so on. We built the Electric Book template because we needed something that was very flexible. We build books for a whole array of clients, from children's book publishers to scholarly publishers, higher education, general interest trade publications. And so we need a lot of flexibility in the way those books look and the kind of functionality we put in the digital editions. We also need to be able to work with collaborators anywhere in the world at any time. So we need a system that works online and allows anybody to collaborate on a given book. And that's what the Electric Book template provides. For the more technical among us, the Electric Book template is a Jekyll template. Jekyll is a static site generator, and we do all our collaboration and version control on GitHub. If you're a non-technical bookmaker, then don't worry about that. That's all behind the scenes, and everything works without you needing to know that. So the Electric Book template itself is a very plain vanilla, deliberately plain and vanilla template. What we're looking at right now on the screen is the homepage that the template generates when you first create a blank website with the raw template as it stands. It has this blank book in it with like nothing in it except a sample title and text and a very basic menu. It also ships with documentation in the template itself. So if you make a copy of the template to create your own book, you also get all this documentation. And I'll talk a little bit in a moment about how you might copy that the template and use it yourself. So what have we created with the electric book template? The first project, and in fact, the reason we created the template at all, the reason I started working on it about 5 years ago, was this project, Better Care. Better Care is now an independent nonprofit that I co-founded, and Better Care publishes a whole range of healthcare learning programs in the form of textbooks and open access content for health professionals, nurses and midwives, doctors, and so on. And everything Better Care publishes is online in website form to read for free. That all needs to be mobile friendly because a lot of the nurses and midwives that read our material have only their mobile phones to read it on. And then, of course, very important that we produce a high quality paperback edition, because in most training situations, we've found over the last dozen years working with Better Care material, nurses, midwives, hospital trainers really like a printed book to work from as well. And so we need to produce all of these outputs from the same master source that we can update often. Better Care produces a wide range of books. This is just 8 of about 24 of the books, and this is actually the landing page of what the Better Care calls their learning station, the place where the books live and where you can read them for free. I'll put the URL at the top of the page there if you want to check it out, bettercare.co.za/learn. And by clicking through into one of these books, you can find the content itself. And one of the major advantages of us publishing in this way is that we can create quick updates. So over the last month, our team working with the Better Care authors have created a new chapter on COVID-19 for our infection prevention and control course, and a separate booklet for community health workers. And that's now being used around the country. The community health worker book was produced specifically for health workers in the rural Eastern Cape of South Africa. It's being used there. And it's really great to be able to respond quickly as a publisher because we're set up with a digital first workflow that allows us to get websites up fast and booklets out quickly in this way. The next project, and probably one of the biggest ones we've ever worked with, is this monster economics textbook for first and second year economics. CORE is a nonprofit in the UK. It was based originally at UCL and is now runs independently and produces an open access economics textbook called The Economy. CORE came to us about 3 years ago needing some kind of solution for producing a open access website edition that was mobile friendly and that also had a print edition that Oxford University Press would sell as theirs with their brand on it. And we set about working with them to create and to build out the electric book workflow in a way that would make it possible for us to produce this enormous book. This particular book is 500,000 words long, and as you can see there, is published in a number of languages. The ones here, English, French, Italian, and Spanish, are the languages that are live and available now. And there are another half a dozen in progress at the moment. So we need to be able to work with translation teams everywhere in the world, all collaboratively on the same project at the same time. And again, the electric book workflow lets us do that. The book, as I said, is available in different languages. So here's a French edition, and it also includes a number of features in the web edition that we need, and many of these are built into the electric book workflow as standard functionality. These what we call accordion sections, the ability to expand and contract content sections, as well as clickable multiple choice that give the user feedback on their answers immediately. Those are all kind of built into the electric book template. These are pop-up definitions that we use in the book. And then the electric book template also allows us to export app editions of this book. So here we've got the app in the Google Play Store, and it's really pleasing to see that nice 4.5 star rating. And this app is widely used around the world. What fascinates me is that the country that uses it the most is South Africa. And our theory is that a lot of students might have internet access on campus at university or college, but don't when they go home. And so the app allows them to download the entire book on their phones while on campus, and then go offline and read the book wherever find themselves, which is a real win there. It's also available in the Windows Store as a Windows app. And then for iOS, we publish an ePub. And the main reason for that is that Apple says that our books are books and not apps, and therefore doesn't allow them in the App Store at this stage. We hope that will change at some stage in the future. But for now, the ePub output works for Apple users as well. And then, as I mentioned, Oxford University Press publishes the print edition. This was really important to us in terms of validating the quality of the book that we could produce design-wise and editorially using the Electric Book template, because I used to work for Oxford many, many years ago. I know how high their standards are for the kinds of books they're willing to put their brand on, and that was it was very important that we could meet those standards. And also the French edition published by Erol in Paris, also high quality publishing, and we needed to meet their standards as well. So that's great. There are also other editions in progress in other languages. So Core is a really, really big project. And then another project we worked on recently in a completely different sector of publishing. This is general interest nonfiction. Daily Maverick is an online news source, news provider, I suppose, in South Africa. And they've been around just over 10 years. And late last year, they wanted to publish a book of their first 10 years, the history of their 10 years. And being an online destination, they wanted to do something online as well. But they needed to produce a beautiful printed book, because that's what you can sell. That's what people are willing to actually spend money on. And it creates a kind of collector's item of this particular history that they're working with. So we produced the book. We also produced this website, which you can see at the URL on the screen there, dailymaverick.co/gamechanger. And obviously fully mobile responsive, and quite a quick, fast site to make it easy for readers anywhere to read. Daily Maverick also wanted to make sure that it was free to read online, because they didn't want to hold their history ransom behind a price point or a paywall in this case, which is great publishing. So you can show just some of the mobile screen designs there. We've got a lot of flexibility about how we design these sites, given how plain the template is. We really get to lay our own design on top of that. And then it's also available as a Kindle ebook when we upload the ePub that we produce. And the PDF is just really, really a beautiful book. It's a stunning book. We worked with designer Karen Lilia at Hybrid Creative, who created the page design. And then the design itself is actually created entirely with CSS, page media CSS, and output to PDF using Prince.xml. Okay, so that is just a really fast overview of the kinds of books some of the kinds of books we've been producing over the last few years. What I'm going to do now is imagine that I'm a non-technical user and I want to create an electric book from scratch to start working on, to start collaborating with someone else on. If I'm non-technical, I'm going to be using the Electric Book Manager. So the Electric Book Manager is an online, you could call it a CMS in a way. It's essentially a way for non-technical people to use the Electric Book template without having to install slightly geeky software applications like Jekyll and Prince on their computers. They can do everything online. At this stage, the Electric Book Manager is still in beta. We have a small client list that uses it every day. We use it to collaborate with proofreaders and authors and other non-technical team members around the world. What I've got here is a video I'm going to play of creating a book. And I did it as a video because I didn't want the demo to crash in the middle of this meeting. But if you have questions as we go, I can pause, answer them, and so on. So I'll talk through exactly what we would do on the Electric Book Manager when we create a new book. The first thing is we sign in with a GitHub account. And because everything you do in the Electric Book Manager syncs to your GitHub account. Now I land on my dashboard and I'm going to add a new project. I'm going to start a new project, click next. I'm going to call this project Space Potatoes because I'm going to create a totally bizarre book here, just because it's fun to do a strange book in a demo. And I click New Project. What the Electric Book Manager is doing right now is it is copying the Electric Book template into a brand new repository on GitHub in my account. If you don't know what GitHub is, don't worry about it. Don't have to think about it. If you are a GitHub user, then you have a sense of what's now happened. So now I have a repository that I can now edit. I'm going to go into the edit menu, and I'll see my files appear down on the left. There are my outputs. And what I want to do is I want to output a PDF and a website, and I'm going to set that up. The first thing is I need to go to this meta file and put in some project information about the project. The first thing is I'm going to give my project a name. I'm going to call it Growing Potatoes. And then down in the section where we define each publication or work in the project, I'm going to set the book directory to be the book called Potatoes in Space. This is my crazy book, and I'm going to call myself the author. There we go. Okay, that's some very basic setup. There's loads more we do in the meta file, the metadata file, but that's the minimum we need to produce a book that looks like a book. Okay, now I'm going to go into the text folders, and I'm going to open a Markdown file here. So if you know Markdown, you'll know it's a very simple syntax for capturing text. I've just pasted in some Lorem Gibson here, kind of sample text based on William Gibson's style. I'm going to create a first chapter. And now I'm going to go to the second chapter. These are blank files that are in the electric book template. And I'll paste in my chapter 2 here. So now I've got 2 chapters of text in my book ready to go. So obviously in a real world situation, I'd be pasting my manuscript in here. And now I'm going to output the book. I'm going to choose the book directory. The electric book template comes with a samples book as well, some of which is translated into French, just so that you can see how different kinds of content have been marked up and output in the electric book template. What's happening right now is that the electric book manager server is generating the HTML from my Markdown and the other files in the repository here. And it's essentially creating a kind of website, really, which it's going to then output to PDF. So it says generating down there. It'll generate for about 10 or 15 seconds. There we go. And then we get our PDF will appear about now. There we go. Let's just zoom out a little bit. Basic vanilla book, ready to go. Potatoes in Space. Little contents page built in, copyright page, little crop marks for printing, and the text ready to go. My 2 chapters that I just pasted in. So that's your print ready file. It's CMYK, correct color profiles, ready to go to the printer. But of course, there's probably more I want to do. The first thing I want to do is I want to see what happens if I now output the same content as a website. Oh, I forgot. First, let's just show how we change some of the print PDF specs. So what I'm just going to pause here for a second because I've skipped a bit. What I've now gone into the print PDF styles. You could see in the file structure on the left here, I've got a book folder and a styles folder, and inside there, the styles for print PDF. And I've opened that file. And what I'm now going to do is add some variables to the file that will define different things about the style of that book. Specifically, I'm just going to change, for the purposes of this part of the demo, the size of the pages. So I'm going to make this book a small square book, 150 mils, quite a small little one. I'm going to save that. And now if I output the PDF again, we'll see instantly when it generates the PDF that we've now got a different page size. So those variables become a part of the CSS style sheets that get generated every time I output a PDF. There are probably about 50 different variables one can use in print design, and a bit later in this demo, I'll show you how those how those can work together to create quite a different look and feel. And then on top of that, you can add your own CSS or Sass, if you're a Sass developer, Sass styles to design your book. Okay, we're nearly there. Our PDF should refresh in a second. Right, it's done. Let's jump to the other tab. And we can see now, if we zoom out, we've now got the small format square book. So all the text has reflowed into the new page size. That's really the beauty of Paged Media CSS, is that the layout is largely automated for us. Okay, now I want to go and see what this looks like as a website. So I'm going to go to the output button and choose a web version. So what the Electric Book Manager is doing now, it's rebuilding the HTML again, but it's building it in a slightly different way. This time it's building the HTML specifically to be served as a website. So taking the same content, but also a whole lot of other template code around that for things like the navigation that I'm going to need in the book, a masthead across the top, built-in search, and so on. That will allow me to browse my book as a website. Again, behind the scenes, technically, Jekyll is generating the HTML that we need from our Markdown files we just pasted in. And once Jekyll's finished building the website, it'll serve the site right here. And one of the great things about using the template as it is that you can essentially get free hosting. If you keep your project on a place like GitHub, I believe GitLab offers a similar service, or you use a free service like Netlify, you can actually create your website webbook in well under an hour and be hosting it for free on the public web through one of those free services. It makes it really fast to prototype books using the system. Okay, there we go. We've popped onto the homepage here, and you can see there's that homepage I showed you earlier. It's the default, but you can see our Potatoes in Space book is now ready, and we go to chapter 1. Here's our text that we pasted in earlier, browsable as a website. Pop forward to the next page, next chapter. Here's chapter 2. Okay, so great. It's all working. I can pop back to my homepage, but of course, maybe I don't like the color and all this template homepage in this. I don't really want for my book. So we're going to go make some changes to that just to show how it works. So the index.md page here is my homepage. I'm going to delete all the template content on the homepage, and I'm just going to say, my homepage is just going to say Growing Potatoes. That's the name of my project, and it contains this one book called Potatoes in Space. I'm using a Markdown link here to link straight to the Potatoes in Space book. I'm going to pop the title field in there as well. That'll be the browser tab at the top. Once it's a website. Great, so now my homepage is sorted, no longer the template homepage. And now let's go change some colors in the website itself. So this particular styles file in assets sets styles for the landing page, the homepage. Now it's books, pages on the website that aren't inside a particular book. I'm going to make the accent color of the homepage something called salmon, which is a color that's built into CSS. A lovely salmon color. And now I'm going into the book styles. So these are the styles that are specific to the book, Potatoes in Space. And there I want the accent color to be different. I'm going to use this color called Dodger Blue, also a nice color built into CSS. Great, so I've changed my colors, and now I'm going to output the web version again. So what we should see now, once Jekyll has rebuilt our site, is we should see the accent color on the homepage will be salmon. The accent color in the book itself, once I go into the book to read it, should be Dodger Blue. And our landing page, which we called index, will contain just my title, Growing Potatoes, and a link to the book. So there we go, Growing Potatoes, salmon color, ready to go. Click here on the, or I can go through the navigation to get to the chapter I want to see. And there's chapter 1, and you can see the Dodger Blue accent color in the book itself. And this way we can actually create very different styles per book within a given website. You can have any number of books in one website, and each book can have its own CSS, its own styles, as we've done with the color here. So if I'm happy with all the changes I've made, I can now commit this my work to version control. Committing is a term that people familiar with Git will be very used to, but it's essentially I'm taking a snapshot of the project as it stands right now, and I'm saving that snapshot into GitHub so that it's safely stored online and also available for my collaborators to work on as well. I'll just click commit now. What's happening in the background is the Electric Book Manager has committed that to my GitHub account, safely synced it away there. And I can go see that by going to the See Project on GitHub menu here. And here we are on GitHub in my repository that the Electric Book Manager created. I can go to the commit I've just made, and there I can see all the exact changes line by line that I've just made to my project. And this creates an amazing version history through the life of a project. It tells you exactly who did what at any particular time. Okay, so that was a whirlwind tour through creating a brand new book in the Electric Book template. What I want to do next is show what we would do if we were taking this book production to the next level. There's only so much we can do on the Electric Book Manager online because that's really designed for non-technical team members. And as beta software, it doesn't have anything like all the functionality that is possible if you're working on the template on your own machine locally. So what I would do now, if I'm at Electric Book Works, or if I'm a tech-savvy book producer, is I would clone that repository, which means make a copy of that repository, onto my own computer from GitHub. And once it's on my own computer, I can actually work on it. So I've already done that with Space Potatoes. So let me just find my place here. Make sure I'm not missing anything out. Okay. So here I am in my code editor. I'm using Visual Studio Code at the moment. And I've got my Space Potatoes project here that I've made a copy of to my local machine from GitHub. And this is going to be version controlled, and I'll be able to sync my version control with GitHub so that my collaborators will be able to see exactly what changes I make. But for now, I can just work on this copy on my local machine and test all the different outputs. So you can see here are all the files that we saw in the Electric Book Manager, plus a few that aren't visible in the Electric Book Manager because they're more technical. And I'll take you through some of the process we want to do to make this book a little bit more interesting and to output different versions of it. So the first thing I might do is run the output script. So the Electric Book template comes with a script. It's going to be really small on the screen share here. Sorry about that. File Explorer doesn't let me zoom in. And you can see here, these are the same files in the repository that I've just showed you here in Visual Studio Code. And there are 3 files that start with the word run. Run Linux, run Mac, run Windows. And each of those, obviously, you run on your particular operating system. Windows will let me just double-click this run Windows file. And what will pop up is this command prompt with a little menu. There we go. And the menu says Electric Book Options. And it gives me a whole list of different tasks I can complete in this particular repository, or this particular book project at the moment. And I'm going to just start with that very first option to create a print PDF. So I'm just going to type 1 because that's my choice. And then the script's going to ask me a few questions. It wants to know which book folder are we processing. If I had a number of books in the same project, each book would be in its own folder, and I would type in the name of that folder. In this particular case, I'm using the template folder, which is just called book. And because I'm using the template folder, I can just hit enter. The Electric Book template can also hold translations of books in a book folder. So you can produce a book in any number of languages. In this case, I'm not outputting a translation. I just want the regular book. So again, just hit enter. I can add extra configuration files. That's quite a technical thing we don't need to go into right now. And then does this book use math jacks? If we've used maths in a book, we need to say yes here because there's a little bit of extra processing that happens. But in this case, no maths in my book, so I'm just going to hit enter. And at this point, exactly as we just saw on the Electric Book Manager earlier online, Jekyll is generating my HTML, turning my Markdown into HTML, and then will generate a PDF using prints. So here's Jekyll doing its thing. It'll take about 5 or 10 seconds to generate. This is happening live. I'm no longer on video here, so everything really needs to work. Come on, Jekyll. There we go. Okay, great. Computer a bit slow with all this going on. And now we're generating a PDF. And again, this is a print-ready PDF. As I mentioned earlier, it's for those who are into PDF settings, it's a PDF X1A file, so it could be accepted by almost any printer in the world for high-end printing. And it's in a CMY color space ready for offset printing. There's a separate output option in the Electric Book Run script to output a screen PDF, which is different. It uses a different PDF profile with an RGB color profile. So here we are in Potatoes in Space, and it's exactly the PDF we had online earlier. You can see that it's a very plain vanilla Electric Book template. All we've changed is the page size, and we can see here's the text that we had earlier. So that's exactly what we had on the Electric Book template earlier. And what I want to do is change a bit of the design. So I'm going to go back to my code editor here, and I'm going to go into the books styles folder and open the print PDF styles. This is the same file we were editing on the Electric Book Manager a moment ago. There we added the page width and page height. I've pre-prepared a few extra design variables. So I'm just going to paste them in here. Okay, those are the extra design variables there. Before I output this file, or I'm not even going to save this in yet, I'm first going to also add a few things to our content, just to show a little bit more of the Electric Book template functionality. I'm going to go back into the text files here in the text folder, go to my first chapter, which is this o1.md, stands for Markdown file. And I'm going to add two things. I want to add an image, so you can see how we pop an image into the text. And I also want to add a multiple choice question so that we can see how the multiple choice questions render in PDF, ePub, and on the web. So the first thing is I need to do is I need to add an image to my project. To do that, I will need to put the JPEG in the right folder. I'm going to go and open up some images. I'm going to use this city image here, the picture of Cape Town at twilight, and I'm going to put it into my folder. So here is my Space Potatoes file browser. I'm going to go into the book folder and into the images folder for that book. And I'm going to put the city image inside the source folder. I'm going to need different sizes of image for every output. The ePub needs an image that is optimized for ePub output. Print PDF needs a big CMYK image. The web needs a range of different sizes of RGB image. And so I need an automated way to turn my original city image into all those different formats. And for that, again, I go back to the output script that we were using earlier. So I'm going to go back to my menu here in my command prompt. And I'm going to choose this seventh option, convert source images to output formats. Choose number 7, hit enter. And again, I'm just going to pick the defaults here. So what's happening right now is that the Electric Book template software is taking my original image and outputting a whole lot of different versions of that image for PDF, print PDF, screen PDF, the web, ePub, and an app if I wanted to create that. Great, that's done. Now that the image is actually in my project, I can add it to my content. And the way I'm going to add it is I'm going to use a special tag here. Pop it down here, I think. So I've pasted this tag in. These little bracket percentage signs are what we call liquid tags. Liquid is a technically speaking, a templating language that allows us to put little tags in our text that essentially contain little templates of code. And it makes it really easy to add some quite powerful functionality into the Electric Book books that we produce. In this particular case, this tag says include a figure, and in that figure, use image city.jpg. So that's all it is. So I'm going to save that, and we'll see that image pop up in a second. The other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to include a multiple choice question. So to include a multiple choice question, I'm going to open a new file. I'm going to write my multiple choice question in a particular sequence. First thing is I'm just going to type in my question as it is. So that's the question I'm going to ask. Which famous novel is about growing potatoes on Mars? Great Expectations, The Little Prince, and The Martian. And then based on what the user clicks, I want to give them some feedback. So here's my feedback. If they answer Great Expectations, I wanted to say, if only Dickens had thought of that, and so on. Now I need to tell the Electric Book template that these are my answer options, and this is the feedback. And so I add little tags to that. I'm going to tag this one MCQ options. I'm going to tag this one MCQ feedback. These tags here are in a syntax that belongs to the Markdown flavor we're using. It's a type of Markdown called Cramdown. If you're not technically inclined, don't worry about that. If you're into that kind of geekery, then Cramdown's really interesting. And then I need to tell the Electric Book template which of my 3 options is the correct one. So I add this little piece of text at the top of the file here, which we call front matter, between little dashes here. 3 dashes, and I just say the correct answer. Correct is option 3. Okay, now my question is ready. I'm going to save that question, and I'm going to save it into the text folder inside my book. I'm just going to call it question1.md. Okay, great. Because I've just saved it as a Markdown file, my editor knows it's Markdown, so now I get some nice, pretty syntax highlighting. Now back into my text here, let's say I want to put the question, the multiple choice question, in between these 2 paragraphs. Now again, I use one of these liquid tags. I say include multiple choice question, and the file to use is question1. That's the file I've just created there, the question1 file. Okay, save that. I'm doing a lot all at once in order to cover as much ground in the time we have. So if you're getting a bit lost, sorry about that. Hopefully it'll all come clear once we output this to PDF. Okay. Another thing I want to do is add an ePub. So I'll come back to ePub in a moment, but let's first see what our print PDF is looking like now. I'm going back to my options here. I'm going to output my print PDF again. Again, just pick all the default options, and now my PDF will regenerate. I'm going to give this a few seconds to generate the new HTML for the PDF, and it'll automatically refresh the PDF. I'll open the PDF we have already in the background. Go down to chapter 1, where things are going to happen. It's going to happen on this spread. Then we can just watch our progress here in the command line. The output script works, as I said, there's a run script for Linux and for Mac. We have team members using Mac and using Windows, and I try to keep the Linux version up to date as much as possible as well, because our people use that as well. Okay, our PDF is about to update. There we go. There's our image, which is great. And there's our multiple choice question. So in PDF, the template outputs a very vanilla, not much design here, version of the multiple choice questions, the text of the question, the 3 options, and the PDF doesn't include the feedback for obvious reasons, and little checkboxes to answer there. When we get to the web output, we'll see that these are clickable answers in web. Okay, that's great. The other thing we want to do is just tweak this design a little bit. We had pasted in our new design variables here, but I hadn't saved the file yet, so they didn't take effect. In a way, this is a kind of design theme, these lines here. And you can see that they're setting things like margins, font sizes, and running headers, and so on. So I'm going to save that now. Go back to my output script and just hit enter. It says enter to run again. So I just hit enter, and it immediately rebuilds the HTML and turns it into a PDF again. Again, we'll give this another 20 seconds or so, and our PDF should refresh, and we should see our design of the PDF change quite a lot. And what I've gone for with this very basic design is I'm going to make this, because it's a small square book, make it look a little bit more like a book for children learning to read. Maybe they're 10 or 12 years old. So I'm going to make the font a little bit bigger and jazz up the accent fonts as well in a second. There we go. Okay. Okay, I see I forgot to do a piece because I'm not getting the font I wanted here. I love demos. So I'm just going to pop back to something I forgot to do. I set all these variables, including using this font called Contrail1, but I forgot to actually include the font. What I'm going to do is just go and grab that. And to import a font, in this case, I'm just using the embed code that I got straight from Google Fonts. I went to Google Fonts, found the font I want, chose the embed code for importing, and just paste it in like that. That'll make the font available when I output. And the other thing I want to change is I just want to make my headings here, close up this space a little bit here. So I'm going to use a little bit of custom CSS, paste that in there. Those who know CSS will find this very familiar. Otherwise, if you don't know about CSS, don't worry about it. Okay, let's output our PDF again. And generally, when I'm designing a book in CSS, this command line just stays open, and I'm hitting enter all the time as I refresh my PDF, look at it over and over and over again. There are ways to speed up the output of the PDF. We're not going to go into those now because it will take us a bit too much time. But generally, you want to get down to the point where you're re-outputting the PDF is only taking 3 or 4 seconds so that you can design and iterate quite quickly. Go see how our PDF is working. That's better. Great. Now we're getting in the Contrail font. I've closed up the space a little bit here. You can see Contrail font is coming in through our running headers here. So now that's a design that I'm much happier with. Our image still working there. Okay. Print PDF sorted. Now we want to go and start outputting the other formats. In particular, I'm interested in the ePub format, and I want to see what this is looking like as a website. When I get to ePub, I'm going to need a front cover for that ePub. And so what I've done is I've already created a little cover for this demo here. I need to go and put it in my images. So here's a little potatoes in space cover that I've mocked up. I'm going to throw this into my source images here. Replace the existing template cover. Head back to my menu here, and again, I just need to convert those images. Again, convert my cover into the different file formats for different outputs. So every time I'm adding a new image, I need to run the convert source images to output formats step again. There we go, all done there, which is nice and easy. Just want to check that it worked because of a little, sorry, I need to do that again. Because in setting up this demo, I forgot something and I mucked it up. Let's do that again, won't take long. What I should see is my different output format images will reappear in this folder as soon as I've run the script. Here it is generating all the different image sizes, all the different output formats. They're appearing now. Should be done any second. Perfect, sorted. So now if I go into the print PDF folder, what I've got here is my cover and my city file in a large format. You can see that's a 6 meg image, that's CMYK, that's great for print PDF. But if I were to head over to, say, the web, I've got much smaller files and I've got different file sizes. So I've got 320 pixel, 640 pixel, 1024, and so on, so that I can serve users different file size, different image sizes based on whether they're on a mobile phone or a desktop, and so on. That's all handled for me. Great. I've got a cover and I've got some images. Great, let's go and see now what happens if we output this book as a website. Back to my menu here, I'm going to choose option 3 now, run as a website. Again, I'm going to pick the defaults. I'm going to open a little browser ready to load the website when it's up and running. Again, here, Jekyll's generating my website. Once it's running, I'll go and refresh my browser. Should take 10 or 20 seconds. Let's see how we go. Yeah, and I've seen your question in the chat. Thanks so much. I'll talk a little bit more about other publishers in a bit. It's a good question. I think my computer's groaning a little bit under running Big Blue Button and videos and everything else. Only a bit quicker than this, but it'll get this in. On very, very big sites, like the core book we produce, the core book takes about an hour to generate, and so we're not generating the entire book as we're working on it. We exclude a whole lot of the files so that we can regenerate just the piece we're working on at the time. And also when we deploy our really big projects to live servers for real production, we have a fully automated process that will just read our Git repository, automatically build on a server, and then deploy the built site to the live server when it's ready. And that's, we use CodeShip for that deployment. So those who are technically minded and know about continuous integration and continuous deployment, will have a sense of what I mean when I say we have a script that's publicly available that we use to automate deployment from Git repos through CodeShip to live production services, either over SSH or FTP, which makes it pretty easy to build things. Cool, 125-second build time. That is slow. Normally it's much faster. Sorry about my computer. It's doing its best. Okay, here we go. So this is the same website that we saw when we generated it, output it on the EBM earlier. Our potatoes in Spacebook. But now we should have some new stuff in our content. The first thing is if I click through to potatoes in space, I've now got my cover. Click on the cover, it takes me to the contents page. And I can go through to chapter 1 here. I can also use the navigation to get through to get to my book. And we should see there's our city image that we added in earlier. Here's our multiple choice question. If I answer incorrectly, I'm going to get incorrect and the feedback. And if I answer correctly, I get this appropriate feedback. We've designed this by default to allow multiple select because a lot of the books we've produced require multiple select. And so that's hence the checkboxes rather than radio buttons for multiple choice in our system. Great, so that's up and running. Website working okay. I think the next thing I want to show is how we will get an ePub out of this. So I'm going to just kill the server. Don't need the website anymore. And now we're going to go back and set up our ePub output. There's the print PD styles. We don't need those anymore. We're done with the Markdown. Our question we don't need anymore. Great. Again, to output ePub, I'm going to use the run script. Before I do, there's one thing I do need to change. ePub is super strict about links, and our contents page at the moment is linking to some files that no longer exist because we changed the names of some headings that no longer exist because we changed the names of the headings in the template. We changed Hello World and Goodbye World to Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. So back in my meta file here, which is really the heart of the project, contains all the metadata about the project and about each book in the project. Part of the section in this metadata file is this ePub section here. And we can put all kinds of metadata here. This is standard Dublin core metadata we put down for the ePub. And one of the things we define is the table of contents for the ePub. I just need to take out some of the stuff here that is no longer valid. We took out the Goodbye World heading, so I'm just going to delete that out the way. And also take out the Hello World heading. There we go. Now I've got a table of contents for my ePub that will work just fine. Again, I can now go back to the repository, run my Windows output script. I get my command prompt menu. I don't really need to know how to use the command prompt to use this. As you can see, I just need to double click that file and answer the questions. I do often myself, as a technical person, use the command prompt, but for our less technical collaborators, this is really, really easy to use. And I'm going to choose create an ePub. I'm going to choose option 4. And I'm just going to, again, choose the defaults that it asks me about. It's also asking whether I want to run ePub check, and I do. So I'm just going to hit enter. ePub check is a piece of software that validates an ePub to make sure the code is all meets the official ePub specification. That's a requirement for pretty much any retailer and distributor around the world. And so if you have ePub check installed on your computer, as I do, the run script will look for it and run the ePub through ePub check so that you immediately get your validation results. That's actually incredibly useful. One of the things ePub checks that we find particularly useful is that it checks that internal links in an ePub, or clickable cross-references, actually work, actually exist. Because when you're working on a big project, it's very easy for those things to break while you're making editorial changes to headings and links and so on. And ePub validation checks that for us. So right now, Jekyll's finished creating our HTML. We've got a few more steps in the software that are just cleaning out that HTML up for ePub use, renaming HTML to XHTML and so on. That should take another 5 or 10 seconds, and then we'll have an ePub that we're ready to have a look at. So it changes all the internal links from HTML to XHTML as well. It's now running ePub check, so it's now validating the file. So it's found ePub check on my computer, running the validation. It'll open the validation log in my text editor, which we'll see in a second. It'll be empty if there are no errors. And if there are errors or warnings, they'll come up in the log there, so I can examine them and debug the ePub if I need to. I'm hoping this comes through totally valid first time. Okay, here's my ePub check log, completely empty, which means we're good. There's nothing to worry about. And the script has also opened my output folder where my ePub is sitting. You can see that's the timestamp for right now here in South Africa. So we know it's the ePub I've just generated now. I'm going to open this in the Thorium reader, a really great open source project. Moment. Okay, here is potatoes in space in the Thorium reader. Got our cover there. And if I can click through the file, title page, right, contents page, our text starts, and there's our image, our multiple choice quiz. By default, in the electric book template, our multiple choice questions in ePub are not clickable. And that's because by default, we don't try to put JavaScript, which is required for that interactivity, into ePubs. JavaScript support in ePub readers is very spotty and inconsistent, so we don't trust it. And so by default, we export non-interactive multiple choice questions. But it is possible and documented in our documentation to add scripts to ePubs so that you can get that interactivity. We've done that for the core economics ePub that we've produced for iBooks, for instance, because there we trust that iBooks has some JavaScript support. And that is ePub's output, so that seems to be working okay. Right, that was all the demo stuff I wanted to get through. I'm glad I made it and left some time for questions. It took us quite a long time, and I'm very impressed with everybody who is still around, and if you're still listening, for making it through that. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can pop them in the text, or you can unmute yourself. I don't think I have muting control here in Big Blue Button, so I think it's up to you. I see that Jan Martinek, who is the creator of the very cool Next book, which I also was watching the demo of last week. Thanks, Jan. Looks fascinating. Particularly interested in your bookmarking functionality. Something we're working on here as well. Jan's asked, what's our experience with traditional publishers adopting a workflow like this? So it's a really good question. We did a pilot of almost a year with a large educational publisher in South Africa a couple of years ago. And there were pros and cons. In the end, the company chose not to roll it out throughout their teams. And I think that the biggest problem there was that big established company really had trouble just with IT management. Their staff aren't allowed to install anything new on their own machines, and installing anything new is impossible. And these are all new tools, right? And it really brought home to me that if a publishing company wants to innovate, you've got to give your staff quite a lot of freedom to try new stuff and experiment. So that was an issue, but we did some fun, exciting stuff, and some of the functionality in the electric template now came out of that project. I like the ability to create questions, like the ones I created in the demo now, that can be used across many books. So you can create like a question bank that you can then use in multiple books in the electric book template. So far, we haven't found a traditional publisher that's built this into their workflow at all. What we do have is we've got clients who leave that production up to us, and then use the electric book manager to participate in the production process. Because we still, in order to get the kind of power and flexibility in book design that we need, we still have to do this fairly technical, codey, edity stuff. And so we need a collaboration where we're still handling a lot of that. And the publishing company is sending us corrections or logging in online to make their own corrections. So early days, really early days. We are finding that most of the clients who are coming to us now are not publishing companies. They're organizations that need to publish for strategic reasons and don't want to be a publishing company, like Core Economics, the Office for National Statistics in the UK. We're working with Sciences Po in Paris on French high school books and things like that. Those are really interesting clients to work with. Monique asks, is it possible to make one HTML file? Monique, I assume what you mean is that can you combine the whole book into a single HTML file? The short answer is no at this point. That's a really good question. So for instance, we love Page.js, an open source project to create PDFs from HTML, and that could, in theory, replace something like Print.xml, which is the only proprietary piece we have to use. And that would, at the moment, require one HTML file. We, for various other aspects of our functionality, use entire HTML files for particular pieces of the book. So the dedication is one HTML file, the epigraph is one HTML file, chapter 1 is one HTML file. And it has to do with how we process files for prints. And the biggest problem is we can't concatenate them into one big HTML file because of internal links and IDs. We can't have duplicate IDs, and we might have a ID, and we haven't figured out a way to automatically update names of IDs and internal references. So that's a bit of a technical answer to your question. Happy to dig into it if you're curious about what's possible there. Thanks, Julian, for the support. I'm a big admirer of everything you do, and particularly Page.js. We actually have a branch of the Electric Book template on GitHub where I've implemented Page.js as our output engine. And we're just figuring out how to solve exactly the question Monique asked. How do we get our files, how do we process multiple files in one book with Page.js and make our page numbering consistent? It's definitely all happening, and I'm really excited about what's going to be possible there. Thanks, Julian. He says we're getting there. Yep, that's great. I know there's a lot happening in Page.js, which is really exciting. There's another project that I worked on with support from Cabbage Tree Labs, which builds Page.js, called paged.design. If you go in a browser to page.design, they're creating style sheets for Page.js books. Really worth checking out as well. Totally separate from the Electric Book template, but really exciting technology. Thanks, Julian. Put the link in the chat there, which is really, really great. Cool. Yeah, as Jan said, it's hard to onboard professionals without broader company strategy. I think that's exactly one of the issues we found when we were trying to implement this kind of workflow with a big educational publisher. One of the key stumbling blocks was that the leadership were there at the beginning and gave the project their blessing, and then they stepped away, leaving people who didn't have true decision making and spending power to make the pilot project really work. And they just aren't in a position to push it through, aren't in a position to understand the strategic importance for the broader company. So it's very important when trying to implement any kind of new workflow with a big company that senior leadership with real strategic vision and decision-making power are part of the whole project all the way, because otherwise the project will lose momentum, or it'll get stuck in people's day-to-day distractions and lives. Yeah. Okay, I see some typing happening, so I'll take a note. There, we're good, all good. Well, thank you everybody for being here. We filled the hour, which is really fantastic. As I said, this will be recorded, so the recording will be available. If you know of anyone else who's curious about this stuff, please pass on the link once that's up. And I'm always happy to answer questions. I'm at electricbookworks.com. Back to that slide there. So electricbookworks.com, and you can also reach me at arthur@electricbookworks.com. And thanks again to the Open Publishing Fest. It's been such a fun last 10 days, and a few more days to go. If you are able at all to see some of the other Open Publishing Fest sessions over the next few days, I highly recommend them. It's been an absolute pleasure. Big thanks to the Coco Foundation for making it all happen and the team behind it. Great. Thanks, everybody. Keep well.